This is a guide for Divide at Impera Rome 2, specifically a Sparta guide. Did you really think I was going to yell, "This is Sparta"? How cringe that would be. But speaking of cringe, Sparta is not a particularly strong faction in this mod. Sure, they do have viable tools that they can make use of. Their hoplites are pretty good, and their general is amongst one of the best units in this mod throughout all the factions. But simultaneously, their unit roster is far too constrained to be super powerful, and frankly, their hoplites get less and less useful as the campaign progresses and other factions develop equally skilled and, frankly, better units. By the end of a campaign, Sparta's roster feels incredibly outdated, clunky, and frustrating to use, although the units never stop looking cool. So without further ado, let's see Sparta's start position and learn how can we make Sparta useful in a campaign. Alright, so this is Sparta's start position in this campaign, and frankly, I believe this to be the strongest part of Sparta in general, because it's a really easy start. It's called a hard start position, but at least that's what it's identified as at the beginning of the campaign, but I actually find it quite simple, quite easy. Now, what you're going to start at is at War with Nobody. You have a lot of diplomatic treaties with Athens over here, your allies to the north, and you can quite easily get military access if you want. I mean, I think we'll just give it to you for free, or maybe you have to pay a little bit for it sometimes. If you want to get a defensive alliance with them, I think it'll just cost a little bit, so you can get like a full-on alliance structure with the Athenians. Let's see, will they go for a full-on military alliance if you pay like everything? I'm kind of curious here. No, they won't. So they won't go as far as a full-on military alliance, but you can get everything up to that with them if you wish. However, I'm not sure that you'd want that because you're actually very constrained in how you can expand militarily if you do. Let's just look at the map to see why that's the case. So the only faction that you border is Athens, and considering that you have a non-aggression pact with them, you can't attack them. You do technically share a province with Knossos over here, the Cretans. However, how are you going to get over here? You don't have a port in your city, so you can't raise a fleet, as you can see. So if you try to get your troops over here, you're going to take massive attritional losses as your men float around aimlessly on the sea. So that's not exactly going to go well for you, and by the time your Spartans arrive to Crete, they will be in such a derelict state that they'll get slaughtered by the Cretans with ease. Now, if you do look at your initial units that you can recruit, this really does demonstrate the weakness of the Spartan roster. I mean, you only have like one cavalry option, the Spartan cavalry, and these guys have a paltry 9 attack and 8 melee defense, as well as an armor of 23, which is really bad for a cavalry unit. So, like, you're not exactly going to punch holes in the Athenian ranks with this unit. Also, look at your population. You only have 774 homioi. Now, think about the... or homoioi? Homoioi. But anyway, the problem with that is that all of your elite Spartan hoplites, the type of hoplites that you associate directly with Sparta, come from this population. So, without this population class, you won't be able to recruit your elite Spartan warriors, your Spartan youths, as well as your Spartan hoplites. And I guess the cavalry too, if you count them as elite. But they truly are mediocre. I would never get Spartan cavalry. Just draw cavalry out of your mercenary population. That's really all that you can do. But anyways, basically because you have such a small amount of this population, you can only recruit 3 more Spartan hoplites before you run out of these guys to use. So you probably don't want to do that. Then you're never going to be able to get these guys later in the campaign, and that would suck. Definitely wouldn't be worth abusing your population right now. So you're going to have to look down the list at what else you can offer. And that is the Perioikoi hoplites and the Helots. Now, the Perioikoi aren't bad, particularly because Spartan units get buffed right from the onset. Like, if you look at, I believe it's this building. No, it's not this building. Does this building provide experience to units? I don't believe it does. So I guess it's just a faction trait, or perhaps it's this? Does this one? No, it doesn't help recruits. Okay, I'm gonna go look at the faction buffs later. I think that's where we're gonna find a reason why these guys were all upgraded from the onset. But long story short, whatever you recruit is gonna have experience chevrons on it. And that's going to change things quite a bit for you, because it's going to allow these Perioikoi hoplites to best Athenian hoplites with ease, who won't have the experience right on them. So what I would do for your initial army is just recruit lots of these Perioikoi, and then use helots as a support for your army. So I would go like some of these guys, you know, some helot slingers or some helot archers, probably helot archers would be more useful, and then just kind of get a collection of these guys to make a somewhat serviceable army. Throw in whatever mercenaries are recruitable from your helot and Perioikoi class as well. For example, these Cretan infantry come from your helot class, and look at their statistics, guys. Like, sure, 15 armor is not good, but 51 morale is nothing to scoff at. Combine that with 2 javelin volleys, 10 attack, and 19 melee defense. 25 weapon damage. These guys are far more effective melee infantry than anything else you can get. And speaking of Spartan melee infantry, your only options for melee infantry are these Scutari swordsmen, who, while they do have 15 melee attack, we have a paltry 15 armor, but they do have 4 javelin volleys, which is actually more than they had when I played Sparta in my campaign. So I think that these guys were amended and buffed a little bit. I mean, I guess they're not horrible just because of the ammunition, and the 15 attack is actually pretty good, but the 15 armor is terrible, so you want to keep these guys out of combat. I made a lot of use of these Spartan youths in my campaigns, but you have to wait till you actually have a homoid population. So yeah, essentially what my rambling is going to conclude with is that you really do need to use a lot of these Perioikoi hoplites. These guys are going to be the basis of your initial armies. Use helots to skirmish. And when it comes to your melee infantry, recruit these Cretans if you can. You can also use these mercenary peltis. Relative to the other options you have, will have good combat stats. I mean, look at this unit. 9 melee attack, 18 melee defense. I mean, it's comparable to that of your Scutari swordsmen, so why not? Scutari peltis don't have good stats, by the way, so don't ever go for these guys. And of course, these helots are not terrible, actually. Sure, they don't have 1 armor, but 7 melee attack, 15 melee defense, as well as a base morale of 44 is nothing to scoff at for a unit that you can recruit for basically like no population and no money. These guys are pretty useful at holding the flanks against crappy troops, and it's not like the Athenians are going to come at you with amazing troops. But when it comes to your initial ability to expand, I would probably just betray Athens. If I were you, I mean, sure, they are willing to sign some pretty deep treaties with you if you really want to. I would still just eliminate the Athenians. So look at these guys. Look at that snobby fellow. You want to get rid of him? You want to take him out? How will you allow such a vain and snobby person to walk the earth? Surely no Spartan will. But also, you really do need a portside settlement. Because this province is like 100% culturally Greek, Athens is just like the most valuable city for you to own. Besides that, if you capture this portside settlement, then you can make ships and then go sail to Crete and then conquer the rest of the province. It's just, with Sparta, it feels like fate that you need to go conquer Athens. Now, the only alternative to doing that is that in theory you could cross from here to here. So like from the north of the Peloponnese here, you can cross into Macedonia. And then you can go conquer the Aetolian League and maybe go on to like Macedon or whatever. But that's like such a far-flung thing. And why not just go and betray the Athenians? Why not? How many factions are going to be around to declare war on you once you do that? Really not too many. So I think it's absolutely a prudent decision to just go on, take out the Athenians, and wipe them out. But anyway, that's kind of it when it comes to the campaign map. It is a relatively simple campaign and a very simple start position. But once you conquer all of Hellas, you kind of do end up with a lull of like what to do. It's like when you really do think about it, right? Like once you conquer these free settlements, if you expand towards the rest of Macedon, Rome will just declare war on you. That's what happened in my campaign, and I didn't even expand over here. Like it is absolutely inevitable that Rome is going to declare war on you and try to take you out once you conquer Athens. Like the only way you can avoid that is by holding up here, but what fun is that, right? So once you go and you take Athens and you take Knossos, you kind of have to figure out where else can you expand to get the funds to eventually challenge the Romans. Now what I did was I attacked Asia. I just made some fleets and ferried troops over and took on the Asians. And that proved very successful. You could also go and attack the Thracians, and if you really wanted to be outlandish and interesting, you could sail all the way to the Bosphorus and attack here. It really is up to you, but you are basically going to have to turn into an expeditionary force and attack. Because if you just expand indefinitely to the north, eventually the Romans will just crash into you and ruin everything. So you kind of have to find a place to defend when it comes to your homeland, and I was just very easily able to defend along like the Athenian border here. I just placed like 2 or 3 armies over here in defensive position, and I held the Romans forever until I was able to take my revenge. So that's kind of the expansion plan of Sparta. Now let's go look at their faction buffs and their army. Now, when it comes to the Greek faction buffs, there really isn't a ton to talk about here. All the Greek factions, they get Greek knowledge, which is a plus 5% to research rate. That's not the type of buff that's going to radically change your playthrough, but it is just a nice one to have, just a quality of life improvement. Why not take additional research rate? You'll occasionally win a turn on some really long-winded research project that you're embarking on, so why not? It might be useful, it might not, but it's a nice buff to have. Now, plus 2 to cultural conversion is just generally a nice buff to have, because you don't want to deal with those foreign culture penalties for long. So it is nice to get this plus 2. Again, neither of these changes the game radically. It doesn't help you attack anyone. It doesn't help you make an excessive amount of income in your campaign or win battles with ease. They're just kind of nice little light buffs. I would say that some of these factions have way stronger buffs than that. These are some of the weaker ones for sure. Now when it comes to Sparta itself, you did get decreased slave unhappiness. I mean, obviously this is just useful if you like taking a lot of slaves, if you like ransoming captives when you take settlements and ultimately you just overpopulate your settlements with slaves. It is nice to get decreased slave unhappiness this way, so if you're embarking on lots of conquests, this will be good for you. The increased experience rank for Spartan infantry recruits. Now this is the good one. This is the really good one. So it seems that basically all infantry, with the exception of like a couple, will get 2 experience chevrons, which is a lot. It will help you decisively beat some factions in battle and just give you advantages where typically you wouldn't have them. So this is actually a very useful buff, probably one of the strongest aspects of Sparta, other than them having a very easily defensible start position. Now, the debuff is decreased wealth from industrial and commerce buildings, which is just annoying. It's just annoying, right? Because you're already going to have challenges populating your armies, but now you're also going to have challenges maintaining them, since all of your commercial buildings aren't going to make as much money. And this also means that your economy is probably going to be a bit more agrarian, since this isn't going to affect agrarian buildings as much. But it is what it is. Ultimately, the increased experience for all infantry recruits is the unique part of Sparta. It means that despite your men not being innately better, it's through their experience, it's through their battle-hardened nature that they will defeat the enemy. Now let's look at the Spartan army. Now here is a Spartan roster. Bask in its glory, and then be revolted when you realize it's not awfully glorious. Now you do have to remember that every single unit you see here, with the exception of a couple like Helot hoplites, will spawn into the game with experience chevrons. And that makes basically all of these units innately better than their base stats. However, simultaneously, if we judge the Spartans by their base stats, they absolutely aren't anything special, and the limitations in their roster makes them pretty weak. But let's start with a strong point, because I am naturally an optimist by nature, so why not? Now, the Spartan Royal Bodyguard, let's give them those experience chevrons. Actually, let's not. Let's base these units on their just base stats. Let's be fair here. Now, the Spartan Royal Bodyguard is absolutely one of the strongest units in the game, one of the strongest general units, and one of the strongest units. It boasts a massive 21 melee defense, which is just incredible, 21 charge bonus, which is good for a hoplite, 26 weapon damage, which is again pretty good for a hoplite. Now, 38 armor isn't really amazing by any means. Well, 9 melee attack, I kind of brushed over that because it looks low, but 9 melee attack is like an elite hoplite unit's worth of melee attack. You're not going to get much more than this. But 38 armor, you absolutely can get more. Some hoplites have like 41 armor or whatever, but 62 base morale is killer, man. It's absolutely glorious, and of course this unit has 225 men, so they are a really elite unit. There's actually only one other hoplite unit in the game that has 225 men. It's the shield bearers, or the Hypastes of Macedon, and I can pull these guys up. I mean, let's see if the Hypastes are as good. They have less melee defense, they have same charge bonus, same weapon damage, melee AP is the same, but the Hypastes do have more armor, but they have less morale. So ultimately, I would say that with better melee defense and with better morale, but, you know, a little bit lower armor, 3 less armor, I would say the Hippias is better. But of course, Antigonids have such a better roster, but having a slightly worse elite bodyguard that you can only have max 1 of in your army isn't really such a difference. But what I'm trying to really say here, though, is that in your battles with Sparta, you're going to be making extensive use of his general. He has to be the hero. He has to not just carry his weight, but carry far more than his weight, because the rest of your units are not going to be up to par compared to this guy. Now when it comes to melee infantry, aka your sword units, there really isn't anything special here. This allied Furrow Swordsman is a generic Furrow Swordsman. Like I said in my last video where I covered Epirus, these guys aren't really anything special. They have 9 melee attack and 14 melee defense, which seems deceptively good, but 13 charge bonus makes them suck. They have 46 base morale, which is kind of low, and 15 armor as well. The combination of 15 armor and having 225 men, which makes a unit die a little bit quicker compared to the 150 men units, means that these guys are just going to run really quick from the battlefield, but morale is not going to hold. The only thing good about these guys is that they have 3 volleys of javelin, so they're kind of like a hybrid of an actual melee infantryman and a skirmisher, but they're not going to reliably hold the flanks. They're not going to reliably hold anything, so I wouldn't use these guys for much. Scutari Swordsmen we also covered. To be frank, these guys are a better version of the Pharao Spear because they're more offensive, slightly higher charge. They have, like, the attack and the defense is split. But then, like, also the Pharao Swordsmen, they have 225 men, while these guys have 150. Actually, I don't know if these guys are better, but also you do need to go for a reform to recruit these, so that is kind of a disadvantage too. You can get these guys right from the beginning. But again, none of these guys are special, man. Like, these guys are both pretty crappy units. Like, honestly, I didn't make use of these guys in my campaigns at all, and every time I attempted to, like, before I actually did that playthrough that succeeded, it was mainly because these guys would just run at every occasion. These guys suck, man. I wouldn't use them. Now, the Spartan 4X swordsmen are not really that good. I'm gonna be honest, guys. Like, this is not a elite Spartan hoplite that has translated his craft effectively to swordsmanship. This is a crappy Spartan attempt to mimic a Roman swordsman, but one where he fails utterly, because while he does have 16 melee attack and 9 melee defense, which are reasonably okay stats, although the 9 melee defense is kind of alarmingly low, he only has 30 armor, which is terrible for a late game swords unit. Like, you have to wait till the very end of the campaign to recruit these, pretty much, so they're just terrible. I think like Roman Principes, like the spear version, turn 1 have like 38 armor. So to only get the 30 armor by the end of the campaign is terrible. Now, it is very Spartan, but it's still terrible, man. But anyway, we talked about Helots. These guys are cheap buffer units. They are reasonably strong considering that they are cost almost nothing to recruit. And given that you just innately get 2 experience chevrons when they spawn into the campaign, they actually do end up being reasonably good and capable of beating other levies with ease, but they're really not that good. Now, allied Pharao Spears, I would use these guys over Pharao Swords any day of the week. Sure, they only have 1 ammunition compared to the 3 ammunition of the sword unit, but they are just actually a capable spear unit that can hold a line. And these guys will die on your flanks while these guys will actually hold. Maybe if you have like 2 of these plus 1 of these on the flanks, then they could be pretty useful together. But anyway, moving on to Spartan youths. These guys do come out of your homioi population, so you might not want to recruit them sheerly because you're saving for actual Spartan hoplites. But they actually are a surprisingly good unit. Like, firstly, 12 melee attack and 13 melee defense is a really nice and balanced combination of statistics. I mean, this ensures that they can hit hard, they can defend hard, they don't die very quickly. They're really good, and then also 26 charge bonus. Think about that. Like, 26 charge bonus is equivalent to a barbarian sword unit, like a good barbarian sword unit. These guys are, you know, young warriors who want to prove themselves, so they barrel into battle fearlessly, and that charge can absolutely obliterate units. So if you use these guys on the flanks instead of these guys, they're actually good. Like, besides a Spartan 4x sword, which is a late game unit, and this is a turn 1 unit, so we shouldn't really be comparing them, although statistically they're surprisingly not that far off from each other, I'll be honest. Yeah, these 4x swords are so lackluster. Like, in my campaign, whenever they went up against Romans, they just got clobbered with ease. But these guys, they served me so well in my campaign. Also, look at a couple of other things here, guys. 4 speed. 4 speed. These guys run as fast as archers. But they have 12 melee attack and 13 melee defense. 46 base morale is great, and once you pump them up with 2 experience chevrons, they become god tier. They become absolutely... These guys end up having like close to 60... No, 48 base morale. Never mind, I'm overselling on the base morale factor, but 46 morale is pretty good as a base, and also bonus there's cavalry 16. So if you use these guys to assist in a cavalry battle, they will absolutely help your cavalry win whatever scrap they're in. These guys mince through cavalry with a passion. So when it comes to whatever units you want as like supportive units or to hold your flanks, I would say that your best units for holding your flanks are probably going to be these Freo Spears or these Helots. The Helots, because they're cheap, so if you're trying to just make a composition but it's not going to cost you $1 billion to maintain, I would just choose Helots. But these Freo Swordsmen are probably going to be your most consistently recruited unit for holding flanks. These hoplites, these Spartan youths can do it, but they're a luxury just because they come from your homioi population. But if you have nurtured your elite population and you can recruit these guys, just go for them, man. But charge bonus, those melee stats, that base morale as well as that speed will help them maneuver around the battlefield and clobber anything in their path. They are great units, man. Next, for your phalanx infantry. This is obviously where Sparta's hitting power is, but also I do want to sell you the point that they're actually not that good. Like, if it wasn't for about 2 extra experience chevrons they get, most of these units are utterly unexceptional. And let's start out with this Freed Helot Hoplite. Now, these guys are good because they're cheap and they recruit from your Helot population, so at least you won't have to suffer through the different population issues that Sparta typically has. But if you look at their statistics and compare them to a typical militia hoplite, they have like slightly better stats. They have 1 more base morale, 1 more melee attack, 2 more melee defense, 2 more charge, and then 5 more armor. They are slightly better than a levy, and they are worse than a Macedonian hoplite, a regular Macedonian hoplite. They are far worse in virtually every statistic with the exception of melee attack. So these guys aren't good, alright? They absolutely will not hold up as a line. For weakest stat being their 37 base morale. I mean, you want your hoplites to actually be able to hold a line, and these guys won't hold a line for crap. So I wouldn't really ever use them unless you're just hurriedly trying to recruit cheap units to defend a settlement against an oncoming rush. Then because they are hoplites, they can stand at a choke point and block it. I mean, even Levy can do that, right? So these guys will do it for sure, because they're better than Levy. Now, what about Perioikoi hoplites? Are they better than your standard Macedonian hoplites, which are just generic hoplites, basically? Well, the answer is no. I mean, if you look at their stats, they're actually absolutely identical. So these guys are identical to a generic hoplite. They are a generic hoplite. Now, with 2 experience chevrons, they will have more melee attack and melee defense, so they will be better. And even if you're going up against your initial foe, which Again, I advocate for Athens, but you can play your campaign however you want. If you look at your typical Athenian hoplite here, the Athenian hoplite will have less morale, but slightly more armor than that of a Perioikoi hoplite. So these guys are essentially equivalent. However, once you load those experience chevrons on, they will beat the Athenian hoplite in combat. So I actually believe that these guys are better. So with the experience chevrons, they're better. And you will have them, so I guess this may be a mute point. But I'm just saying, these guys are nothing special without experience chevrons. Next, let's move on to the next hoplite. I'll do pike separate. Next hoplite's a Homioi hoplite. Now, compared to your Perioikoi, they have 1 more attack, they have 2 more melee defense, 1 more charge, 2 more weapon damage, same armor at 30, but they do have more base morale and then also slightly more bonuses. They're also faster, so once you get like experience chevron upgrades, do the experience chevrons make them faster? No, they don't. So they do move slightly faster than the other 2 speed units, so it's like a deceptive 2. But you can see if I just put them side by anything else, they are like one of the fastest 2 unit. And you know what? You actually do see this when you move around. But again, it's like, are these guys anything special? No. Let's compare them to a Roman early game Triari. $817. These guys have 817. 19 charge bonus, 38 armor, 50 morale. 30 armor, 49 morale. Triari are better, guys. Triari are better. The only thing that Triari are worse at is that they move slower. But they have better combat stats in every single regard. So, guys, is Spartan Hoplite really looking about hot now? I mean, sure, it is an elite Hoplite unit, but I'm telling you guys, when I was playing my campaign and I had my Hoplites in a phalanx formation with attack orders given up against the Romans, they would lose frontally to Principe every single time. Not the spear Principe, the sword Principe, but still, they would lose. So it really does show that the Spartan way of fighting is outdated by the era that this game is made in. But the Spartans, they do hold on to their traditions stubbornly, but these traditions do not give them power like they used to. They're actually more of a bottleneck for the Spartans to progress to better things. Now, you also do have access to the Spartan Guest Hoplite, and these guys are useful in the campaign because you might not have the population to recruit these guys. In fact, I'm going to amend my statement. It's not like you might not have the population to recruit Spartan Hoplites, you won't have the population to a lot of the time. So you can get these guys, and they have the same stats, more or less. They have slightly less morale, but 5 more armor. It's an even trade-off, guys. The Spartan Guest Hoplites are just as good as these Homioi. So they are, like, while they're not elite Hoplites, because I hope you guys have realized that these Hoplites will lose to elite Bactrian Hoplites, elite Epirot Hoplites, elite Macedonian Hoplites. Like, let me just show you guys, like an elite Bactrian Hoplite, which you can recruit on turn 1, by the way, but you do need population 1. These guys have 9 melee attack, 19 melee defense, and 52 morale. They have better stats in every significant way over the Spartan Hoplite. But anyway, what I am saying, though, is that you can recruit these guys from population 4, from your foreigner population, but they take 3 turns to recruit. So the way that you make an army out of these guys is you kind of just start mass recruiting them, and you just have to wait. And it's just going to take you like 10 turns to make the army, but the army that you do make will be glorious. So I did make extensive use of these guys, and they were a very reliable mainline in most of my conquests. I actually probably ended up using these guys more than these guys, just because you can actually access them. So yeah, they are kind of the tool that you use to overcome Sparta's population problems, and they are available from turn 1. You just need to upgrade your barracks. So they're a useful tool. Use them. Now, once you get to your 4-axe reforms, you get these reformed Spartan Hoplites, which are absolute beasts. 9 melee attack, 20 melee defense. They actually do beat the Urvana Guard in terms of stats. 21 charge, 35 armor, which is still not very good. The Spartan's signature is having low armor. And I think 52 morale, 56 morale. And they do maintain the Spartan speed as well. They're still a little bit faster than everything else. So these guys are good. It basically just means that your standard Spartan Hoplite is going to be akin to the standard elite Hoplites of other successor or Hellenic factions, but Still, you have to wait till 120 to get these guys. You have to wait till turn 120. So it's not like you get these guys with any degree of speed. You have to wait. And they're still not going to beat Roman infantry, by the way. I hate to break it to you, but you're never going to have hoplites capable of beating Roman infantry frontally unless you just end up laddening these guys with vast experience. Like, if you get them to triple gold, they will beat Roman infantry that are, like, also experienced chevron, but still. Now, one tool that the Spartans do have, which is pretty cool, is they have these Spartan pikemen. Now, you can get these Spartan light pikes. They come from your Helot class, so these guys are really awesome if you're just trying to create an army quickly and you just don't have the most men to recruit. These guys are pretty dang useful, guys. I mean, I used them whenever I was in a population crunch, but I needed like a front line that could actually hold something, because these freed Helot hoplites won't hold for anything, but these guys actually will, so I used them as a mainline more than once. I'm not ashamed to admit it. But then you also have Spartan pikemen. Now, these Spartan pikemen are not the best pikes, I'll be honest with you. But I do believe that they're available from like turn 60 if you've conquered enough territory. I believe that it is the Thorax pikemen that you get later. And these guys do have pretty effective offensive capabilities, because if you compare them to, like, say we take an Epirode pike here. Where is Epirus? Here we go. So Epirus has like some pretty standard pikes. You can see here that these guys have a melee attack of 9. These guys have a melee attack of 11. Of course, a melee defense of 11 compared to the Epirate pike that has a melee defense of 12. But then these guys, these Spartans, also have more weapon damage, more charge bonus. Armor, they have less armor. But the base morale is higher because Spartan troops do have more morale. And I believe that these guys are also quick. Yeah, they have the same movement speed as the Spartan hoplites, so they are quicker than the average pikemen too. So what these Spartan pikemen end up being is an extra offensive pike, which is kind of cool because the Macedonian pikes, at least before you get the more elite ones or the Thorax ones, end up being a lot more defensive in nature, and the Spartan pikes end up being more offensive. But also, like these Spartan Thorax pikemen, they are the equivalent to... Actually, they are worse than Silver Shield Thorax pikemen and other elite pikemen like the Chaonian Guard and stuff like that. So you do end up getting outclassed with some traits of pikemen, but specifically on turn 60 when you're using the Spartan pikes, they're actually quite cool, man. Like, this is actually a cool unit for the 60 turns before you get the Thorax pikes. They actually are. So yeah, like, you get decent... Look, I'm not saying anything terrible about these units, by the way. But the thing is that the Spartan pikes actually end up being more competent than the Spartan hoplites. Because the pikemen are more comparable to the elites that you get with other factions, but Spartan hoplites actually get beaten by the hoplites of a lot of other Hellenistic factions. The only ones that don't are the general. Like, look at the shield bearer unit. This is better than all of the Spartan hoplites, with the exception of the reformed elite Spartan hoplite. Which again, you have to wait till like the end of your campaign to get, basically. So I hope that really explains how they're not like really elite. I mean, these Spartan youths are the best like light hoplite in the game. So this is a cool unit. These Spartan pikes are pretty cool. These guys are a really effective way to make a mainline without having to worry about population. And think about it, like even if you're using the Seleucids, the Epirodes, the Macedonians, you probably have to go from population class population class 2, but these guys come from population class 4. You can just spam them without thinking. So like, these guys are pretty good. And everything's gonna have 2 experience chevrons, which will make them punch a little bit higher than their weight. But still. The phalanxes, I hope I've covered this decently, but yeah, you have to kind of think about what you recruit here, because they're not the best. The missile infantry, as you can see, you have barely anything on offer. Same thing with your cavalry. Like, these Helots are just cheap, but they're not good. These allied archers, they're about the best skirmisher that you're gonna get. Actually, I mean, this This Peltas is nothing special either, but just like okay Peltas. And this Archer, same thing. We do have 20 armor, which is better than a lot of archers, but still, 32 base morale and 165 range is nothing good. In my Sparta campaign, I mostly use mercenary skirmishers, or I used helots just because they were cheap. Now for cavalry, you really don't have anything all that good. Seriously, you don't. Like, the Spartan cavalry I already covered, they're nothing special. Allied Faroes cavalry, they're better than Spartan cavalry. Not in melee, to be fair, but they do come from, I think, your second population class, so at least there's that. And then your picked Ionian Lancers, these guys are actually like a companion cavalry type unit. They are actually good. I think that they might be better than Thessalians, to be honest. So look at these Thessalians, yeah. Yeah, 15 melee attack, while these Thessalians have a measly 12. I mean, these guys do have the same melee attack as... They have better melee attack and companion. They have the same melee attack as early Royal Guard cavalry. So as Macedonian companions, believe it or not. They don't have the same level of armor, I believe, though, right? Yeah, they have way less armor. But these guys are incredibly offensive, and 60 charge bonus is crazy. This cavalry is good, but here's a little catch, guys. It takes 3 turns to recruit them. So if you're making your Spartan guest hoplite and picked Ionian Lancer army, you can just wait forever to spam those units, guys. They will win you battles. They are super effective, and you don't have to worry about your population. And then if you have like a core, like you have these guys on the flanks along with these guys, and then you have a core of Spartan pikemen, now you're cooking with gas. Now you have actually a really competitive Spartan army. But you really have to mix and match here to get value out of these troops. And ultimately, what really just depresses me is that these hoplites really aren't that strong. So when it comes to Sparta, I would say that it's not a super hard campaign in start position, but it's a hard campaign because utilizing this roster effectively will prove somewhat of a challenge. You have to be creative with it, you have to be resilient with it, you have to get lots of kills with your general, and just in general be pretty nifty with maneuvering your troops and planning out your positions. So I would say in terms of difficulty, this is a kind of hard campaign just because of that. Like, I did struggle just specifically because of the roster. So difficulty, I would say that it is like a 7 out of 10, but also in terms of how much you have to play it, I mean, that's like a 9 out of 10. Because it's Sparta, guys! Come on, you have to play a campaign as Sparta. It's your rite of passage as a Rome 2 player, so give it a shout, but this is a challenging campaign. I won't say anything about it. Like, sure, you won't be at war with anybody right away, and you can kind of chill out and figure out how best to utilize this army. And also, Hellas is 100% Greek, so you wouldn't have to deal with any type of cultural challenges. And there's lots of areas of Greeks in your neck of the woods, so you can conquer lots of territories that would be useful to you. But at the same time, you have to be really good at utilizing this roster. And when you're fighting Rome, you're going to be fighting outside of your weight class. It's as simple as that. Like, fighting Rome is like, you're a mouse and you're fighting Mike Tyson. Their roster is so much better than yours that you're going to have to cheese with the pikes and Ionian Lancers 100%. So good luck with that, but yeah, try it out, boys. Sparta was a lot of fun for me to play, and I hope you enjoy your campaign as Sparta too. Bye for now. And I think next I'll probably cover Rhodes, because I've had a little bit of curiosity about their slingers, so stay tuned for that.